Good evening.
Everywhere I go on this island, it seems to me I find degeneracy.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid.
We have a bargain.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
Do you feel the pain? Well, let's see now. Pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
His entire work consists of violence, all the time. Obsessed with the issue of violence. Mayhem, gouging out of eyes, autopsies on the stage.
Come. It is time to keep your appointment.
Good evening, all. Welcome to episode 134 of Double Feature Horror Show. I'm wishing you a happy new year. I hope you are well. I hope you're looking forward to this. I certainly am. And lots of familiar faces in chat. Good to see you. I see Dr. Prepper's just popped in. I've said hi and happy new year to so many, but I'll drop in a special one for you, Dr. Prepper. Hope you're looking forward to this. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that in the intro there is a sneaky bit of Twilight Zone. A little bit of Twilight Zone popped in there. I'll look for anyone who can name which episode it was. It's got a certain relevance to tonight. We are once again returning to horror anthologies, and it's the long-running project. You'll remember we started this early last year. Do you think, was it January or February we started, Murgoot?
We had an episode or two in January, and then we went to Lovecraft, and then about every other month we did 3 or 4 episodes. So.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I thought I'd break it up. And I think that idea is looking increasingly justified now, seeing as we've been running this over a year and we're only just breaking into the 2000s now. And I still feel we've been going fast.
Well, there's a lot out there. I mean, yeah. It doesn't look like it, and then you start reading through and it's like, wow.
Yeah, I found this great article. You know what? I'm going to put it in the chat because this might be some interesting leads for people. Forgive the source, folks. I'll drop this in the chat for you. Looking at this, it just reminded me there are some series we skipped over, and I feel so guilty. I mean, yes, we did Tales from the Crypt. Yes, we did The Outer Limits in the 80s, but we didn't do Tales from the Dark Side. We didn't do a dedicated episode on monsters run by our friend Rick Rubenstein, who's turned up in so many of these.
Or Rod Serling's other famous one, Night Gallery.
Night Gallery. I know, I feel guilty about Night Gallery being missed. I was tempted, like, should we do it? Should we? Maybe just on the cusp of covering something that people remember. Just going into the 2000s, the relevancy, where the algorithm is just ready to pick us up and run with us. Maybe we should just yoink it back to Hammer House of Horrors. What do you reckon? I don't want to be cool. It was tempting. Tell you what, folks, if there is something that you feel we are absolutely skipping over that we really need to go back for, if there is some crime against horror anthologies that we're committing by not covering it, let me know. I mean, that goes for people live. That goes for you wonderful folks on the rewatch. Hello, I remembered you early this week. You guys are, underappreciated stars on this channel, but let me know. I could consider some appeals if we want to go back and cover something that's super important. The Enriab, Masters of Horror, is going to be in the next arc. Or was it this arc? I think I might sneak it in.
It's this arc. We haven't decided which episodes we're going to do, but it is definitely this arc.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. I couldn't remember. It was on the periphery. I think what was confusing me was we were wondering, do we cover Are You Afraid of the Dark? Because it did have a season, a revival season in 1999, which puts it just on the edge of this. And I thought, oh, maybe we could have. I don't know. Anyway, we can't get any further into that. I've got to introduce you. People who have been around here long enough, they're going to know if we're covering horror anthologies, you are going to be here. You are our co-pilot when it comes to these. But
I'm Murgoot. It's just at Murgoot on Twitter or X or whatever it's called this week. Glad to be here yet again and looking forward to discussing our 4 episodes.
Oh, cheers. And I have to ask Murgoot. Oh, and I should say, TCG can't be with us tonight. Sadly, we always love TCG around, but he had something come up. Or possibly I've broken him. Possibly he thought we can't go into another year still covering horror anthologies. Gosh darn it. I'll bribe him. We'll cover scrotum like he wants us to do. They'll reel him back in,
Rumble exclusive. Oh.
Yeah, we'll convince him. There you go. TCG, scrotum. It's in the bag. You've secured it. Oh, dear. I should probably move on. I'll do a little bit of shilling, though, nice and early. You were very professional, your own shill. And, of course, Murgoot is linked in the chat, and hopefully TCG is in as well. But for my own shilling, well, it's been a bit busy, folks. You'll remember I dropped the magnum opus, the far too long, yet apparently could have been longer, Could have been longer, I heard. Review of Scream 6. It was a deep dive. And I thought I was pushing my limits with that, but the response you gave, I'm chuffed. I'm really glad so many people liked it. But the downside of that is you have encouraged me that I can actually go deeper and do even longer ones. I don't need to trim it to try and stay shy of 3 hours. You guys are pushing me to go full mauler. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
it looks like the studios agreed with you on Scream 6 with the loss of 2 actresses and the leaving of the director and the writer.
yeah.
Scream 7's been dropped.
It's imploding. But you know what? I mean, well, how do you feel about it, Murgoot?
I did. I loved your breakdown of it, so I'm not seeing it. Not for a while.
Well, I think the I suppose, how do you feel about Scream 7 being cancelled? And I'd like to think I went into enough detail that no one needs to watch the film.
Well, the 2 actresses being canceled for their political opinions is sad, but that's typical. And the director just getting fed up with everything. They didn't give much of his reasoning, but that sounded understandable with the loss of his lead and loss of one of his better backups or secondary characters. It's kind of understandable because I think he had it plotted out for something, and
yeah.
But with his lead canceled, it's kind of like, yeah.
It's tricky. I mean, it sounds like it got so chaotic that they decided to pull it from production, and it's just going to go quiet for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm going to be honest with you, I think's a good thing.
Well, judging by your review of it, I think it is a good thing because it needs a breather from what you described in depth as a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I just think a lot of it was clearly just they did not care. and they gleefully admit that they don't care. And it's yeah, I know. What do you do with that? They just came out and told you. Like even Shill Media called them. Gosh darn it. Anyway, but another factor in it is just the rush to put it out in a year for no reason. It's I think if you're this long in a series, we will wait. Take a while, work out what you want to do. Try and come up with something genuinely good that needs to be made, because you don't need to make more Scream. We've got so much Scream. Like 5 being as good as it was an absolute treat, and it could have ended at 5 and we'd have been really happy. We don't need to rush it. So I think, to be honest, in all this chaos, them stepping back and rethinking, I'm extremely okay with it.
Well, wait would have been better, but I mean, even 5 was suffering from sequelitis, so it's
true. And I mean, so in the commentary for Scream 5 that is being done as part of the Blockbuster project, that one is already done. Yeah, I did find in the deeper research for that there were some warning signs already in it. I think part of the other problem, apart from like the short production time, is just I think they felt let off the leash after the success of 5 to just kind of like go all out. Bad times. Anyway, that review went out. I know people wanted to hear a little bit about Scream 7. It's chaos. I'd rather they pull it and take the time to make something actually good than just push out another product. So good. That's some news. I also dropped something special because I was unable to do a stream the previous week like I wanted to. So we dropped a bit of a special one that was originally out for members. That was discussing Elite Theory in cinema, with thoughts prompted by Napoleon. And that's probably all I'll say about that. I was going to do another one.
Political philosophy in movies.
Sorry. That's all right. I'm kind of... I like the idea of just trying to hop on the trend, but the Elite Theory in the title will signal anyone who knows this channel that it's going to be bait. But we'll get there. And I've also seen that the NREAB has picked up that we also dropped a Black Christmas commentary for members. That was great. I think it accidentally went totally public for everyone. I was trying a new release feature on YouTube where you can release to members first and have it go public later. And it accidentally went public, but it is now members only. It will be generally released later as part of the Blockbuster project, but really glad people like that. I'm having so much fun doing these commentaries. So yeah, it has been busy. And Adam Loves Horror, welcome back. Happy New Year to you. And I'm very sorry you're suffering from a stomach flu. Thank you for the $2. It's much appreciated. And take it easy, man. Take it easy. Yeah. I hope you're resting up. Also, I've seen Devonte has written his own script. Devonte, I would genuinely want to read that. I'm going to try and make a note so I can find that, because I would very much want to see that. Okay, we have done a little talk. I've done a little shilling. Oh, no, I've just mentioned projects. I'll do the actual shilling now. So, hi again to everyone doing the rewatch. Guys who are watching live, you know I love you. And yeah, you are here regular enough to know that we're on YouTube. And so it all helps to get the channel out there. If you like, if you're subscribed, if you're not subscribed already, if you leave a comment on the video, that is much appreciated. And if you want to go a little further than that and sort of help me purchase further Vincent Price collections and Vincent Price biographies. You can, of course, support us with super chats or joining as a member, and then you will get access to things like the early release for the commentaries that seem to be going down so well. And of course, I'm very happy to cover requests for members. That's something I like to do to pay it back a little bit. You can join as a member either here or on Subscribestar, and that's very much appreciated. So 15 minutes into the episode, should we talk the Twilight Zone? Oh, no, we can't. We can't talk Twilight Zone yet. We're going to do the other thing. Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, you'd mentioned urban Gothic is something you wanted to explore.
I did. I really did. This will be very quick, folks. This was something I was really keen to cover with you, and I can't. I'm not going to say it was the highest quality production, but it did fascinate me. And something I really wanted to get into was, well, you know, I'm a little obsessed with Scream. I'm a little into it. And I'm particularly interested in how immediately after Scream, so many horrors tried to do meta. And so I was on the lookout for it when we got into horror anthologies. Urban Gothic came around early 2000s. It was a very low budget thing produced by Channel 5 in the UK. Americans, I'm sorry if that sounds weird. I gather it has shown on American networks. It ran for 2 seasons. It had a very London-centric vibe, and it was what I was looking for in terms of horror reacting to Scream and going a bit meta, this time in the anthology round. Unfortunately, it's dead. You can't find it anywhere. We had a good look, didn't we, Murgoot?
I wasn't able to find it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain places where you can find certain things.
Things that are in motion daily, for example. Yeah. They have 1 or 2 episodes, but they didn't have the one. If they'd had the couple of episodes that I was really keen on, I would have probably pushed it and said, sorry, guys, these are the only ones we can get our hands on, but it's worth covering for that. But they weren't. They had a couple of their more standard episodes, but they didn't have the episode that was over the top meta. And they didn't have the episode that I thought was actually genuinely good and genuinely scary, which is an episode called The Boys Club. If you want to try and find Urban Gothic The Boys Club, that is worth your time. That is, from my memory, a genuinely scary episode. But I can't find it anywhere, and I don't quite want to buy the DVD of it because I'm not going to say that this is a high quality series, but it was interesting. The meta episode in particular, I thought I would show you as an example of like quite bad meta. It was it's called B Movie, and that's B as in BE, and it's about a bunch of high schoolers getting picked off by a slasher, realizing they're in a slasher movie, and then trying to work out the rules of the slasher so that they can escape. So, you know, very Scream. You can guess. But it goes, how can I say, far beyond Scream's understanding of meta, where they sort of say the rules, which you will recognize, and then Scream will work around it. So you probably know the examples I'm going to give. Sydney is asked about horror movies, and she says she doesn't watch them because there are always some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting. Sydney then, when she is attacked, tries to go out the front door, but is blocked by the killer and is then forced to run upstairs. Or when Sydney tries to flee the scene of the murder at the final party in a van, and Gail and Dewey are also out, sort of moving away from it. They kind of run into each other and try and dodge each other, and that's how they get their attempt to escape ruined. That is Scream showing the rule, trying to do something clever, and then just kind of forcing people back into it in an interesting way. In Urban Gothic's B-movie episode, one of the students just decides, okay, well, there's a killer in here. This is where it's all going down. I'm just going to leave, and then walks out the front gate and is hit by lightning. Yeah, it's a little Deadpool, I guess. Yeah. It was just very obnoxious, just like extremely obnoxious, sort of. I think they may have even rewound the script at one point or found the script. Yeah. Very special, very special. I was so tempted to show it to you folks, but I could not find it. But it was interesting. They brought the meta in. They also did something that we would start to see a bit later. And so I also wanted to mention it, in that they did tie these, or attempt to tie these very disparate stories together. Late in the at the end of season 1 and season 2, they tried to build it all together to give a little bit of coherence to what was going on. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because we will see that a little bit in Black Mirror. But it's a very underrated mechanic in horror anthologies. So, to be honest, you're probably thanking me that I couldn't find copies of it for you. But if you're intrigued, if you would like to see what Channel 5 in the early 2000s managed to put out, have yourself a hunt for it. You might find a couple of sites have 2 episodes, and you may enjoy yourself. But that's everything I wanted to cover for Urban Gothic. And so we move into our discussion of Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone 2002. Murgoot, did you see this the first time around?
I saw some of them. I did see the first one we're covering, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and I'd seen Cradle of Darkness before. I hadn't seen the other 2, which was surprising, but actually the more I think about it, my life was kind of hectic around 2002.
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay. But fond memories from the ones you saw?
The ones that I remember, Cradle of Darkness, I thought was okay. And The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, I remember fondly.
I think we also found that their remake of Eye of the Beholder.
I didn't see that one, and I
No.
need to watch it just to make sure.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't watch it either. I just I remember when we covered Eye of the Beholder in the I think it was in a member stream. I'd looked up the new one as well. I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, for me, this is totally new. I mean, to set some context here, folks, I'm sure you'll be familiar. Oh, Devonte, those are the episodes we found as well, alas. But give them a go. Give them a go. This version of the Twilight Zone, and I will get up the... let's switch to this one. Yeah, this one is coming as the second reboot of it. So you'll remember, folks, the first one is running from 1957, 1959, and was very successful. Ran for 4 seasons. Was it 5, Murgoot?
It was more.
It was 4. Thank you.
No, more. It was.
Oh, it was more. 5 seasons.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you for correcting me. I was dodgy on the details. In fact, they even had enough that they managed to do a couple of lost episodes releases late in the day. We get into the 80s, and there was a revival. I'm trying to remember now. Was the movie before the series?
It was before. It was made.
There we go. Yeah. Movie was 1983, and the movie with bigger name producers, Spielberg, Landis, Joe Dante, and I'm forgetting someone, the Mad Max guy, George Miller. That was pretty successful. Controversial as it was successful, and they managed to reboot it off that. So you got a 1985 series that ran, varying the format somewhat, but still managed to get 3 seasons out of it. Yeah. That did pretty well. Lot of the classic tropes, but also some interesting variation. So we didn't have a Serling-style host, but we did have, very interestingly, big variation in episode lengths. In the 85, you'd get 2 stories per episode, and one could be a sort of full-on, like 40-minute one, and then the other story could be like 8 minutes. And other times it was just classic Twilight Zone, 25 minutes each. Going forward to this one, in the early 2000s, I struggle to know why this happened in 2002. And I think it might have a fair bit to do with Star Trek.
There was also, with Scream and the revival of some horror movies and some science fiction being really popular. Star Trek Voyager was kind of sort of wound up, and they needed a science fiction show on UPN to kind of bolster their ratings.
That's what I reckon would explain it.
Then they merged with WB and kind of canned almost everything except for the very popular UPN series.
Yeah. Well, Devontae's noting here, The Outer Limits had a reboot in the 1990s. Yeah, I think we covered that one. Was that a separate one?
No, we covered it.
I'm thinking there wasn't. There can't have been 2 in that. So yeah, that ran fairly into it. So probably giving them the idea. But I think that the key reason we got this is probably what you said, Murgoot. Star Trek Voyager is wrapping up a bit. You need something in that slot. And who do they get on to front this, to produce it, to get it all going? It's a man called Ira Stephen. Hang on, what was it? Bear, yeah.
He was a big part of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and did some Voyager work. And he's done a lot of projects.
Very much a genre guy.
Series.
Yeah, very much a genre television guy. Had a decent influence with that. So he is the guy you want to get for it. You're wrapping up Star Trek. Get a Star Trek guy in to carry on with that. Someone you can work with. And he is producing the series. He's also writing a lot of the episodes we're covering tonight. So I think that's why we got it in 2002. But I think you could also say at that point, pop culture was really starting to look backwards quite a lot. Like the remakes are really starting to come in at this point.
Yeah. Remakes and series based off of cult classic movies, that kind of thing. Anything to try and bring out a feeling of nostalgia.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you want to be less cynical, you could say it's kind of it's a new technology thing. Like, hey, we've got this awesome thing called CGI. We can do things we'd never been able to do before. So let's go back to those old things, and we can try and tell those stories in a new way, especially sort of fantasy shows, you know?
Mhm.
If you want to be less cynical, you could go with that. Yeah, but that might explain. But I would say generally you're seeing pop culture go and look backward a lot at this time now. You might say that's a total reach because, come on, this is a second reboot. That's cheating. But if we look in this season, and I'm afraid to say this did only last one season, folks, it's a very backwards looking show. As I mean, in the first one, first reboot, there are some ideas that you'd say are similar, but this one fully remakes a couple of episodes, 3 episodes at least, and it even does a sequel to an episode.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
some of the ones we have, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say this makes this, as a whole, much more backwards looking, much more aiming to sort of mine the original Glorious series for what it can, which I don't want it to sound like a negative, you know. I think that's actually fine, and it's quite interesting. They also brought back the host aspect.
Mm-hmm. Bringing in Forrest Whitaker for the star power.
Yes.
And he's a great actor, and he was rather popular at that time, so he did bring a bit of glamour to the show.
Yeah. He's obviously, I mean, am I too cynical, Murgoot? They had this way of trying to make it look like he hadn't just been green screened in, but I think very much like Alfred Hitchcock with his Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, where Hitchcock just filmed all his intros in one afternoon, and then they were inserted into the episodes. Like, Hitchcock was done at that point. I have the feeling that Forrest Whitaker shot everything in one go and was just changing outfits and then green screened for everything.
I have no clue, but it sounds as good as anything, because he was rather flat in effect in most of the episodes I saw.
Yeah. He had all the words down, but some of the delivery was kind of odd. But I noticed there's a little thing, folks. If you look these up, and Devontae is right, they're all on YouTube. Every single one of them is on YouTube. Yeah, they are potato quality. I'm not going to lie to you, but if you can live with it, they're all on YouTube. I noticed that when they swing to him, when they go to his sections in the episodes, the camera will always swing in one direction and he'll then walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they were trying to make it seem like he was in the room. And I just caught them doing it over and over again. And after the first one, I thought, wait a second, he's been green screened in. And in fairness, would you want to spend the money it would cost for early 2000s Forrest Whitaker to get him in for every episode?
Oh, hell no. Not with the budgets that UPN was working with. That was... it's... UPN of the big 5 networks was 1, the lowest rated, and 2, the least financed. And Forrest Whitaker was a big get, but that was, yeah.
Can I just pick up on that if I've got that correct? For us Brits, when you're saying UPN, is UPN more of a budget network, would you say?
Yes.
Because I can say Channel 5 and everyone in Britain knows that's, cheap foreign imports, very low budget, and a slightly saucy movie showing second movie on a Friday night back in the day. That's what everyone knows Channel 5 for. But UPN, WB, we wouldn't know. So
UPN was a lot of sitcoms, especially about urban life, made on the cheap. Some of them were really good. Some of them were utter garbage. And you could tell. And then they had Star Trek Voyager, which was a big draw. And they tried various other shows, and they also ran some syndicated stuff later at night.
didn't they pick up Buffy after season 5?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Caused some interesting things. You know, there's an interesting conversation about how Buffy and Angel sort of talked about each other when they were on separate networks. I found that was quite interesting.
Yeah. And then the WB network bought them out. They quote unquote merged, but UPN was they kept the good stuff and left most of the bad stuff behind, and there wasn't much good stuff at the time of the buyout. So,
how about CBS? Just because I'm just looking at what
ABC, CBS, and NBC are the big three networks that have been around since the 40s. And CBS is good for the adult middle-aged draw. They tend towards procedural cops, detective shows.
I was just noting that the Twilight Zone 1985 revival was on CBS. So I was just wondering if what the implications were for that. But that's very helpful for us Brits. It's how can I say, these implications don't translate to us very well.
CBS tended to have the more serious shows, the hour-long procedurals, detective shows. Like I said, they also tended to have the more adult dramas, like Dallas and Dynasty in the 80s, and then later on. CBS also had Murder, She Wrote. I mean, they were a big deal in the adult demographic.
Okay. All right. Excuse me.
NBC was, a lot of it was sitcoms. ABC was a mix of the two. And through the 80s and most of the 90s, ABC had a lot of the sports broadcasting and a mix of adult shows and sitcoms.
Okay. All right. Okay, that network knowledge helps quite a bit. And we should also... It's interesting that this only lasted one season. So just to get that out there, they have done a variation from the first 2 Twilight Zones. They are back to 25-minute stories, like the original Twilight Zone, back with a host. But they are, like the 85, they're bundling those 2 stories into one episode typically. So it could later be sold off as just sort of half-hour segments or full hours. But unfortunately, didn't take. And so the 44 individual stories only lasted one season. I think there is one episode that is double length, but the rest of them are all 25 minutes long. But yeah, sadly, only lasted the one season.
And that was mainly due to the network merger.
It's sad, but people found if it has found an audience. I mean, this does get re-shown. Just like there is an occasional Twilight Zone marathon around the new year. This gets thrown in there. And I'll be honest, I can see why. I really enjoyed these, Murgoot.
Yeah, they. I'm half and half on them, but they got quality actors either from TV or movies. Just as a lead in to the first one, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. They got excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
They got Andrew McCarthy from the Brat Pack, famous 80s and 90s actor in the lead, and Titus Welliver, who most people in the U.S. Yeah, he's been a character actor for a long time, and his big breakout role was as Bosch, a troubled detective.
Yeah. Yeah, and as this is a tradition, isn't it? Like the Twilight Zone is going to have really good cast. There's always going to be good casting, or interesting casting at least, and that's no exception here. With Whittaker, I was just wondering, actually, how did you feel he was in terms of a replacement for Serling?
Like I said before, his intros, some of them are really good, and some of them, it felt like he was just phoning it in. He was inconsistent on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Some of the energy is off. There's also, I think he possibly wasn't helped by some of the scripting in that they had copied a lot of these sort of Serlingisms that he would do in his introductions, but they didn't always make sense.
It doesn't
a
match.
lot of things. Yeah, a lot of things would just be referred to as the Twilight Zone in a way that came off as very literal. That seemed a bit odd. I'm thinking particularly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Serling's mannerisms don't suit Whittaker's style. It would have been, if he would have been more natural with his style, a little bit better writing, he would have been a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, they did an okay job mimicking. Like, they'd clearly done their research, but some of the feel was off. I'm thinking, like, the things that would drop in, like portrait of a is how they've used that introduction a few times in the original, and I heard them mention that in the introduction to the story. But there's things like I'm thinking particularly of It's Still a Good Life, where he ends up saying off in the cornfield, that is the Twilight Zone. And I'm like, no. Serling wouldn't. The cornfield is not in. It's not the Twilight Zone. It's like, it would have been something like all part of the weird things you'd find in the Twilight Zone. But yeah,
that would have made it better.
Just some of the language was quite off, I thought. But at the same time, I'm going to be honest.
It would have been better if the writers had Whittaker's input on how to do it, how to phrase it. Yeah, it would have modernized it a little bit, but Whittaker has, like I said before, Whittaker has a very different style than Rod Serling does.
And you should just play into it. Yeah, I don't think he was trying to mimic Serling so much, but possibly maybe he just hadn't, because he's filming in advance, like he just hasn't seen the material, so he doesn't know how to pitch it.
Yeah.
Oh, Devontae's posted it. Exactly what I was thinking here.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just going to get that on screen, Devontae. Yeah, otherwise you might wind up in that cornfield known as Twilight Zone. No, that's kind of like an AI render of a Twilight Zone ending. Close, but very off, very off. Close but very off is possibly not a great sentence. Never mind. Yeah, so he possibly just didn't know how to pitch it, which is a shame. But I'm going to be honest, I really enjoyed him. Just the way he. Sorry.
Go ahead.
just there was an energy he brought in that kind of cracked me up. I was somewhat irony watching. I veered between irony watching, genuinely enjoying it. And you know, this is one of those ones where I've done the set ones that I thought we should cover. I had a hard time deciding, and I was just watching a bunch of others. I put on the playlist with it, and then I just let it ride. So I ended up watching one that starred that kid from American Pie.
Schwartzman?
No, the other one. Eddie K. Thomas, the one who's in Freddy Got Fingered.
Oh.
And what else was he in? Anyway. Yeah, he turns up in an episode called Rewind. For fans of The Wire, your boy Wood Harris is in an episode called Another Life. That was great. You know, I found myself just doing extra homework, so I think that's kind of a good sign. Yeah. So I don't. Maybe there was not all that much irony watching, but I did think I'd kind of like to show people the intro before we get into the actual episodes. If
Go ahead.
You think that's a good idea.
Go.
All right. I'm probably going to get copyright nuked for this, but it will be fine. So I'm going to share. Hang on, that tab. Folks, enjoy. Chat. Let me know if you can hear the audio. I really enjoyed this.
You're traveling to another dimension. Dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are only that of the imagination.
And pausing partway through to avoid copyright. We are commenting on this. We'll discuss this extensively, but as YouTube is merciless. There we go.
We're entering the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Like
Lovely.
they tried to get the Chemical Brothers remix and kind of missed on it.
They really did. They really did. Oh man. I mean, I may have got copyright sniped for that. You never know, but it's hard to tell. But you may have noticed that was, as I will tell you in every episode, that is Jonathan Davis of Korn doing that. So yes, it is 2002. You are going to get a little bit of new metal in there. Look, unashamedly, I enjoyed that.
It's decent, especially for the time. So I've heard a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, it's extremely 2002, but whatever. It's got a nice energy to it. One thing I'd read that I thought was maybe a slightly bad decision is that in the original broadcast, one of the pictures in the gallery as you're going through it, can I show you? Yeah, here we go. I'll show you this. So this swirly thing here, that originally was your boy Serling. Yeah. And also there's a nice little meta thing that you've got a gallery here, like the night gallery. And I think it would have been nice to include Serling briefly, because the 1985 gave you this quite nice distorted, haunting image of Serling kind of flashing up on the screen briefly, which I thought was a really nice tribute. I wanted to see him in this. You know,
Yeah, would have been nice.
Yeah.
But okay.
Anyway, enough talking about it. Sadly, it got cancelled. I think somewhat unfairly. It's extremely cozy viewing, and it's all on YouTube. But we'll now, having introed it, we'll get into the discussion of it. We were going to lead in with an episode that is a remake of an original series episode, to sort of establish the connection. So, Murgoot, would you like to take it away describing The Monsters Are on Maple Street?
Yes. It opens with Andrew McCarthy in basically an HOA meeting.
Could you define that for Brits? Sorry, we don't have
Homeowners
those.
Association, property Nazis. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way. Property mid-century Germans.
Yeah, Murgoot. We weren't going to discuss the mid-century Germans on this episode.
Basically, an association of a planned neighborhood, quote unquote, where everybody wants to be in sync with everybody else, and they care about everything from the various shades of beige on the of the houses and lawn length, and they're discussing Christmas decorations basically, and what should be allowed and what should be disallowed. And all of a sudden the power goes out, and they start freaking out, and everybody runs out to their cars, and none of the cars will start. It's like a mini EMP. An EMP has gone off. Electromagnetic pulse. And they start freaking out and talking about what's going on. Is it terrorism? Is it... and they start discussing it and eventually start fighting about it. And Titus Welliver and Andrew McCarthy are the co-antagonists. One wants to figure out what's going on. That's McCarthy's character. And Titus Welliver wants to starts blaming things. And then one of the neighbors rolls up to his house, walks in, turns on, and he has power. And they go over to find out what's going on. McCarthy goes up and talks to him, goes in the house. And Welliver's like, well, why does he have power? And then they find a camera hanging off the eave of the house, and we're being spied on. Well, he's an electrician. He could be spying on everybody. He's responsible. McCarthy comes back, and they're arguing about everything, and they find more cameras on the houses. And McCarthy and Welliver get into a fight, and then Welliver leads everybody over with literal pitchforks and torches and a can of gasoline to the electrician's house and burn it down. And then it cuts to a truck owned by the U.S. Army, and it's too bad that every time we've tried this, every neighborhood has gone up in flames like this. And it's a statement. The original Monsters Are on Maple Street was dealing with the communist menace. This is dealing with the terrorist menace, since this is a year after 9/11 and everything is just ramping up and up and up. And it basically dealing with paranoia in American communities. And it spotlights, we were discussing before how Americans typically react in one of two ways in extreme emergencies. They either all band together and help out, or they go nuts. And this is a warning that everybody's going nuts about terrorism at home.
Yeah, yeah. It's very obviously updated for the time, as you say. And in 25 minutes, it does have to accelerate very quickly. I did think Titus Welliver got a kind of rough job there in kind of having to go from 0 to 100 real quick in terms of calling for things to be burnt down. He had a tough job.
Well, he did a lot of character actor work, and because of his shaved head and his blue eyes, he was used as a villain a lot. And that's probably why they did for him.
Yeah. You called them co-antagonists, and I thought that's true. They really, gosh, I don't think they were too concerned with weighting things very equally. So, Titus Welliver, he is just swigging beer constantly. He never stops swigging beer the entire time.
And Andrew McCarthy is your typical peaceable suburban father, and the sweater and all that. And he's very respectable and peaceable, where Titus is playing your typical beer guzzling redneck dad.
Yeah, the characterization of everyone is a little bit broad, I thought. Even though some of them are more interesting, like what was her name, Phyllis, who was a very nervous woman who wanted everything compliant, and basically her husband was on a military base, and she preferred it back then because it was all uniform.
That's why she's the perfect leader for the homeowners association, because that's the stereotype, and there's a reason there's a stereotype for it. It's really recognizable.
I found her a really interesting character. I really liked her. Of everyone in this, I thought she was the most interesting because everyone else was drawn so very broadly. And I think it suffered from having to accelerate so quickly. So you get those shortcuts, like just one guy immediately just ramps things up and wants to be drinking beer all the time to justify it. But there's still some interesting tension there. It wasn't winning me over massively, but I've got to say this ending kind of works for me. I believe in the original, am I right? It was aliens who were doing the spying.
Correct. And this was more paranoia about the government from the liberals, and thinking we were going too far too fast after 9/11, and putting it on the military. It's just, knowing everything I do, it's spot on. It's almost too much on the nose. But
I mean, there are enough out there public leaks about activities monitoring and experimenting on the populace at home that, this is not a reach. This is not much of a reach at all.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd give this one a good solid 7.5 burgers. It was kind of cheesy at points, but it redeemed itself with the ending.
It did a pretty good job of hiding its budget as well. So they don't want to burn down a house, but excuse me. they don't want to burn down a house. So you only see them really do the violence to one side of the house, and then I just realized, oh, hang on, that's a set you built. You did a separate set, and you just built. Yeah, clever. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
they're disappointed that every neighborhood they've tried it in, it's ended the same way. So
yeah, 5 hours. Oh, what's that? Two meals? People missing 2 meals? Starting to go to barbarism? That's about right. I mean, I found I didn't have a huge response to this, other than I liked it going for it being a government monitoring thing, even though that had kind of a liberal pull. Like, the idea was still we should still pull together. Like, I felt from the way they were saying, none of the places we've experimented on lasted more than 5 hours. Oh, we're in for some trouble. That still had a bit of a, like, maybe a classic Serling liberal pull of, oh no, we need to overcome this. Like, that's very original Twilight Zone. But I also found it very interesting that you noticed the idea is it's very post-racial as well.
that was
in this episode specifically, like, everyone in the homeowners association, it's a really mixed group of people, and it seemed. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead, Murgoot.
The liberal area, comfortably middle class. It's that really, in the 90s and the early 2000s, it really didn't matter that much. In most neighborhoods, the suburbia anyway, in most areas of the nation. Some areas it was very, very different, but in my experience, nobody really cared about race. It was more, we're in the golden age and we're enjoying it, and you take that away from us, we're going to get angry.
I mean, I think that's something that's very common, particularly it sort of calls to mind the sort of Robert Putnam studies, where it's like saying, if you are in a good times, if you are a golden age, if there is social capital being promoted, you're okay with that. So I think a sort of suburbia, or I suppose my equivalent would be the sort of better provided for parts of UK towns, basically where everyone's middle class. You do sort of, there's been a sort of filter applied, and so people will come from everywhere, but they will basically be close enough to each other that it's not a problem. And in that situation, no one really cares. I think of universities are a great example, really, or rather, let's say universities 20 years ago. Basically, everyone's gone through such a filter that they're basically already, even if they're from very different backgrounds, they are largely the same type of person. And in that situation, people can get on and match this kind of ideal. Sorry, it just once, but as Dr. Prepper said, yeah, it's very Fresh Prince. It's the idea of presenting things as America's totally past that issue, but no, that the terrorism angle is what's going to tear us apart. And that's quite interesting to see now, I think, or even in relation to a couple of other episodes that we're going to talk about tonight. But before getting on to that, Patrick Batman, thank you so much for dropping £5. So McCarthy's, and also, isn't it delicious that we've got someone called McCarthy playing in, just like in the original Body Snatchers, Kevin McCarthy that time. McCarthy's character was such a liberal self-insert, above it all, deracinated consumer, doesn't care about community. Yeah, he was making excuses, and you will notice, wife, no eggs. Titus' character is a Chad. Was it the constant beer drinking? Was it the gun? Yes. We're just going for supporting the Chad character. Okay, I can go with that. Well, Thank you very much for the £5. Yeah. As I was saying, you do have the Mr. Reasonable character and the guy who's more suspicious, and just to be sure, we'll make him drink beer all the time and then be physically beaten by the guy half his size. Screenwriters, we see these tricks. We know what you're doing. Yes. Oh, sorry. For dropping the Putnam reference, I'm referring to Robert. Is it? Yes, Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. Quite a lengthy read. Possibly best to go for a summary of it. It's a long book. It's a long book, but it is fascinating. Yes. So you were saying about 7.5 burgers for this.
Yeah, it was decent, but it was rushed. And the ending saved it.
Mm.
It was so rushed near the end. But it's nowhere near as good as the original one from the 60s.
True. I'd probably be rating it a little lower. It'd be about a 6 for me. Interesting, but there are weak things. Waifu, I think, is shading us for glossing over the infertility storyline. That the trouble is, I think that was just in as a filler. Like at the HOA meeting, it was just slightly too long, and I got the feeling that they were just wanting to pad it out a little bit. So that's it's hard to engage with that because it did just feel like it was thrown in. So alas. Yes, we'll prefer our original. Well, with that done, I will move us now to our second one, that's more closely related to the OG. We've gone from a remake. We are now going to talk about a sequel. This is It's Still a Good Life, the sequel to It's a Good Life, one of the more infamous episodes. But I noted here that probably quite sensibly, they had Forrest Whitaker give us the introduction, setting the scene, and reminding people of what the original episode addressed. I don't know if that was wise or not. I mean, probably it was necessary, but I'd like to think that It's a Good Life is well known enough that this maybe would have been a bit excessive.
It worked because it reintroduced people to one of the most iconic of the Twilight Zone weird episodes.
Mm.
And it was done in Twilight Zone, the movie, very over the top. This one brings it back down to the actual story and a continuation of it. And with that, I will leave you to it. I will be right back.
All right, no problem. Well, I will give you the recap. Now I'm having to do a recap of a recap. This is too meta. I don't know if I can handle that. Hey, little Gamma, good to see you in. So Forrest Whitaker here gives us a reintroduction to the world of Peaksville and young Anthony. And Anthony was played by Bill Mumy. We'll show him up here. I do like here, incidentally, though, this map. You will see that over the course of the story, they reassert that basically America is gone, and Anthony, who has near omniscient powers, and I stress near omniscient powers, basically vanishes everything he doesn't like And so he's basically made America disappear and has limited the world to the tiny town of a quite idyllic town of Peakville. Everything runs exactly how he likes, and if anyone upsets him, they're mutated, transfigured, and then banished to the cornfield. So that's the kind of intro we get. But we also get some fairly heavy exposition to get us straight into the story. Forrest Whitaker kind of cheats. He drops the rather large bomb that a now adult Anthony, still played by Bill Mumy, and you will recognize him, has a daughter. The daughter who doesn't have the same powers as him. Now, that's a little bit of an odd one, because we're going to find out in about 7 minutes that his daughter does have his powers, and in fact has even greater powers than he does. Bit of an odd one. I found that kind of a cheat. But there he is, being all adorable, and I will now get you a potato vision of the adult Anthony. There, Bill Mumy. Now, his daughter is also played by his real-life daughter, which is kind of nice. You see the resemblance. She may not be the greatest actor, but the resemblance is very nice. Bill Mumy also turned up in Twilight Zone, the movie, as well as a belligerent guy in a bar, if people are keeping track of that. And Cloris Leachman also returns as his mother in a sort of harder-edged role. Anyway, Anthony is now grown up. He is still using his powers to get exactly what he wants and keeping everyone on edge. Luckily, he doesn't nuke a kid in the intro, but the kid's father there gets burned alive in a really quite impressive effect. I thought it looked really good. It was very nasty. They managed to make him scary, but there is something different about him being an adult. We see over the course of it that he still runs Peakville. We really only sort of see him in his home or in a bowling alley, having now, instead of sitting down watching his favourite TV show and everyone cheering, people now watch him bowl. Absolutely, terrified to do anything that upsets him. But the discovery that his daughter's powers gets people sort of plotting again. His own mother confesses to her granddaughter that she's able to block him from reading her thoughts, and starts to see this as an opportunity to get out. But unfortunately, having blabbed to a friend of hers, well, she told a woman. And therefore, the whole town knew within about 10 seconds. Weak, should have known. And so Anthony easily reads it in the minds, unravels the plot to undo him. And his mother then feels like she's forced into the moment to try and get his daughter to free all of them, to send Anthony to the cornfield. But she won't do it. She goes little Carrie mode. She goes little Carrie mode. Gives her gran the scary glare, banishes her to the cornfield, and everyone else as well, making full use of the early 2000s CGI in a way that actually looked okay. However, the mild twist on this, when they're sort of on their own, just dad and daughter, wondering what to do, is that, oh, what's her name? Gosh darn it. What's her name in the episode? Audrey, thank you. Audrey has an ability that he doesn't. He can actually she can bring things back from the cornfield. And so she brings back all of America, and they decide to venture out together, leading us into that outro that we commented on before, that we felt was a little off here. And I'll just reread it since Devontae posted it. No lesson to be learned here, no morals to be taught, just an update from Peaksville, Ohio, where Anthony and Audrey Fremont want you to think happy thoughts, and you better do as you're told. Otherwise, you might wind up in that cornfield known as the Twilight Zone. A gleefully amoral episode. What did you... Oh, other people have got it. Thank you, wifey. Yes. I never remember character names. Murgoot, what do you feel about this one?
I was happy that they brought back Cloris Leachman along with Bill Mumy. It didn't play out well to me. It was kind of and his dialogue was kind of stilted in the bowling alley. All I could think of was him in Lost in Space, Danger Will Robinson, Danger Will Robinson. And by the end of, I don't know if you know the gimmick song Fish Heads. Bill Mumy was in Barnes and Barnes, the group that did that. I just wanted Fish Heads to be playing on the radio when everybody disappeared, just to make it funny, to make it truly ridiculous, because it was going that way for me.
A little bit. It's I mean, it's a really rich episode to reconnect to, but I'm with you in that I don't think they had really grasped how things would develop. I mean, it is a nightmare to think, like, how do you continue the story of It's a Good Life where everyone is trapped with no hope? I mean, this is some Harlan Ellison, I have no mouth and I must scream stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely nightmarish, and even more disturbing that the Twilight Zone presented this with just this happy, smiling kid and everyone else having to smile too with no way out. And it's bloomin' tough to think how you continue that story and even think, what would that guy be like as an adult?
Yeah, it was a nice homage, but they didn't do it well, in my opinion.
Yeah, good moments in it, but it didn't land. For instance, I'm just like, one aspect that is left completely uncovered is, you know, he's got a daughter. How did that happen? Well, there was a mother for the daughter who he also sent to the cornfield. I mean, the kind of, how can I say, the story logic of him having a romantic relationship is kind of terrifying, actually. Like, that's rich.
That's fridge logic right there. That's kind of tell?
Who's going to say no to him?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if he's got like a sort of 18-year-old libido, there are some, like, I think, isn't the term fridge horror?
Yes.
Yeah. That's underexplored. That's pretty darn grim. That could have been built on. That would have been a really rich vein for horror. And I felt, instead of doing that, they weren't quite sure how to deal with him. Like, as a young kid, him enjoying his power has one kind of terror, but as an adult, it seemed like he was much more aware that everyone else was trying to placate him, and he seemed dissatisfied with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, in a way, I'm struggling to verbalize it, but that seemed to hamper the story quite a lot. If his thing is he's kind of bored with people placating him, then it feels like the story needs to go in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, exploring the relationships, I mean, this could have been a 1-hour episode if they would have explored it, but I think it's too dark for television at that time. I mean, they would have definitely gone into it, and if Jordan Peele, in his revitalization of it or revision of it, Jordan Peele would have made hay with that, but television at the time, they just the thought of it, they had to be subtle with it.
Yeah, I don't know if they even skipped out. Just the fact that they completely skipped to it, to him just have like, and he has a daughter now. It's like, oh, okay, but I like the idea of a longer episode. I would have really gone for that. I mean, wouldn't it be kind of nice to spend? How about just like an intro scene with, say, Timmy's dad pushing Timmy to go to the house and coaching him, and be like, you kind of have to go because if you upset her, we're in trouble.
Well, they didn't think
while
she
you're
had
there,
powers at that time.
Yeah. I think it would be more, you have to go play with her because it's what Anthony wants.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see more scenes around the villagers acting outside of Anthony's sight.
Yeah.
I'd have loved some of that. You could have filled an hour with that easily. Whereas I think he's a really difficult character to make into an adult. There's a sort of infantilization that's still there, but they didn't make him someone who never grew up entirely either. I guess it just seems like the idea of Anthony as an adult was not fully formed.
Yeah, all the implications weren't thought of. I mean, they just, unlike the original, this felt really cardboard. Just the terror wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, there were moments, I would say. I think when Audrey shows her loyalty to her father, that was quite a good moment. Like seeing Cloris Leachman get sent off to the cornfield, I thought was quite interesting. That had quite a bit of power to it. I thought they did kind of underplay what happened to I forget, the woman who was gardening and had the amazing tomatoes. That was good, underplayed, but then the original underplayed things quite a lot as well. When we saw someone transfigured, it was mostly in shadow.
Yeah. It was also, like I said, this one was cardboard. The original one had a lot more tension, even if it was a bit goofy. It was still just the thought of a kid turning life into a cartoon, the people around him into real life cartoons, was frightening.
Yeah. Oh, you're thinking more of like the Joe Dante retelling of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah. He really mined it for the horror. He really did. Oh, and also that one was starring Kevin McCarthy, who we brought up earlier. It's McCarthy's all the way down, boys. Yeah, interesting one. I've got a weird feeling. No, it's the Jordan Peele one. He remade Nightmare at 20,000 feet, didn't he? And he made it 30,000 feet. He hasn't remade this.
Yeah, the 30,000 feet, he did a very different way than the original. But this one, they tried to do just a continuation without the it doesn't have the tension. It was more like watching two petulant children rather than the horror of what do you do when you give a young child with all the power in the world and he throws temper tantrums. This one didn't feel like that.
It didn't mine it. I mean, I don't think we've highlighted this here. You've got the usual thing where you have the casting has got some absolute gems, but And it really lovely to see Bill Mumy and Cloris Leachman back. But at the same time, I didn't notice that the writers were particularly strong. Like, I think this one was written by let me just confirm that. Was this also done by Ira Stephen Bear? Let me get that correct.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. I thought it was.
Alan Crocker.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, outside, you know him from Star Trek, but otherwise, I think most of the writers did not stand out to me. I think that might explain a few of the weaker scripts. A shame, but this was a tough one. It's hard to do. It's a hard one to do, and I also found it a little jarring to have that very 2002 thing where you have Cloris Leachman talking how she sort of wished she'd kill her kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of hard to hear, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the tension that you had in the original, where was it his aunt or his gran was kind of past caring and didn't try and toe the line, and so Cloris Leachman's going out of her way to try and shepherd her. That felt a lot stronger. Whereas there's a sort of, I don't know, with this more modern remake, the attempt to be more adult, I think, just makes it a bit more unpleasant. Yeah, so interesting, but it's not a high scorer for me. How about yourself?
I'd give it in between a 5 and a 6. I'll go with a 5.5, 5.5 burgers. Just because it was so cardboard. They really tried, but it just fell flat for me.
I'm not going to disagree. A 5 feels about fair. It's an interesting experiment. It's not absolutely terrible. And, on the bright side, it's 25 minutes. And, there are nice touches. I really like that Anthony played the piano without touching it. Let's throw that in. I'm going to bump it up to 6 for that nice detail. Like, that struck me as he just... he didn't want to actually learn, but he liked the idea of playing. So he never bothers to train. Can you imagine trying to make that kid learn? No. You would not get young Anthony sat down at the piano for 3 hours a day to learn, no matter how many Chinese parents you throw at him. No, not going to happen. So he ends up as an adult just thinking it would be nice to play, and so he does. This is interesting. Patrick Batman, thank you for throwing another £5 in the hat. Much appreciated. Reminds me of a horror novel, The Resurrectionist, by Rath James White. A child with powers that goes very, very wrong. Is that sort of omniscient powers? Interesting. It's not one I've heard of, I've got to say.
I haven't heard of it either.
But the child with excess powers is very strong as a trope. I mean, one of my favorites of all time, The Omen, which, by the way, the prequel is coming out fairly soon.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry, guys. It's probably not going to happen. I don't know if I can put myself through it, guys. I love that film. I don't think I want to see it get the treatment. Yeah. I mean, would you recommend that one, Patrick Batman? Was it high quality? Be interesting. Thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. And JFC, yes. Very nice. Is someone going to do a Paul Allen? And you can do a dueling super chat. So I'd enjoy that. All right. Oh, crikey. That is not where I expected that story to go. The ability to resurrect the recently dead, and the kid turns into a serial killer. You can just undo the harm. Yeah, of course. Weird. All right. Yeah, so we're ending up kind of under the bar on this one. There's a bit of a swing and a miss.
Mhm.
I mean, even the closing narration is sort of a, we don't know where we're going with this. I mean, you know what? They're going out into the wider world of America. Aren't they just going to turn it all into cornfield again?
I have no clue, but I dread.
Oh, dread. All right. Well, shall we move on into the more original stories now? Gosh.
Cradle of Darkness.
Let's do it. We'll go with that. Okay.
Yeah. Cradle of Darkness, written by Cameron Pazla, directed by Jean de Segonzac.
Yeah, the writer on the video on YouTube where I found this, the writer's turned up in the comments, which is quite nice. It's
Cool.
it's the top comment on the video if you want to ask the writer any questions. Anyway, sorry, Murgoot, go ahead.
Okay. Woman on basically a time cop team. They decide they need to remove Adolf Hitler to solve the world's problems. And she's the one chosen because she has the proper DNA. And she's sent into the past when Hitler is a baby to become the housekeeper, and she has 48 hours to eliminate Adolf Hitler.
And she makes darn sure you get that information with some incredibly concentrated exposition dumping.
Yeah. And she goes in, and the original housekeeper's supposed to be there in 48 hours. She goes in early, makes her introductions to Herr Hitler, Adolf's glowing father, and the other housekeeper is kind of suspicious of her, and she goes through the motions, and the glowing pride that Father Hitler has is shown, and she eventually tries to suffocate the baby Hitler, and she can't do it, so she swallows him up and goes for a walk. The suspicious housekeeper follows her, and to her horror, Ms. Hagel's character jumps off the bridge with baby Adolf to kill herself to meet the time frame. And the suspicious housekeeper pays off a homeless woman for her baby boy, and it ends with Father Hitler introducing Adolf Hitler to the world, to his social group. Just short. Hey, I actually did a Guinness pour intro.
Genuinely did. You nailed that.
I mean, this one's short. This one's simple. I mean, it's simple to explain. The twist was very good. Yeah, she killed Adolf Hitler, but the suspicious nanny goes and buys another baby off of a woman and is raised as Adolf Hitler.
Proving that if she hadn't acted, it would have been fine. It was that awful gypsy blood. That's what did it. That's what did it, you know. Innocent child killed, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I couldn't do it. Now, people are already saying sounds a bit boomer truth. You're not wrong. You know, gotta be a little careful how we discuss this on YouTube. But I kind of like Monsters on Maple Street. It's interesting the worldview that's in this. But I mean, first off, I wanted to note this absolute classic of early sci-fi. This set. The We Have No Budget set.
Hey, they did okay with it. I mean, it was there for a flash, and then it went on to they spent the rest of it on the home, and yeah, the bridge was kind of cheap budget, and so was the alleyway, but they did the best with what they could. This is a well put together episode, and it solves the time travel paradox very, very well, in my opinion.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really like this one. It's
Yeah.
you can't
The-
change the past; it'll fix itself.
There is no point them chucking a ton of money on this set that's there for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But it is sort of, how can I say, what you recognize it as we need some fancy stuff, so we're going to go with that. But also there was some absolutely shameless exposition dumping in this bit.
It worked though.
I guess so, in a kind of, we need you to know this, but oh gosh darn it. It was so, I suppose you got 25 minutes, but gosh darn it. We did get in the early seconds, just, you're going back in time for this. How did you explain to your parents? Well, I told them that I have a unique genetic combination that lets me do this. Which, they've got to address the idea that they can't keep retrying and retrying. Okay, good. But it was, it was very strong exposition. Very strong exposition indeed. There was almost a little bit of a, just so you know, Hitler was a bad guy in there.
Yeah, it was.
I think they might have picked that up from public education. You didn't need to go out of your way to emphasize that.
Yeah,
they might have heard about that in school once or twice.
In your face, but the rest of the episode redeemed itself with the way they did it. Just the horrifying thought of suffocating a child and then making up her mind and drowning herself and the child in the river. And then just to have it all undone by the nanny who really, who brings another child home in the place of Adolf. They did a good job at the end of this one.
I think the solution was rather good, rather ingenious anyway. But they oh man, I had some trouble with this one, Murgoot.
Okay.
I mean, there's some pluses. I love James Remar in this. He was an absolute. I also really like Katherine Heigl. I thought she was doing a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually like her, I mean, obviously we're big fans of her early work, Under Siege 2, but Roswell High.
Maniac was better. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's gosh. Our second episode in a row talking about killing babies. Gosh darn it. How's that happen? Yeah, James Remar is a treat. They spent the money where they needed to, basically. I'm picky about that set when I see it. Buffy did it all the time, you remember. They do Demon Realms that were just a completely dark set with like one light on a spooky thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they were on UPN, so
yeah,
that explains it all.
I think they spent all their budget on the costumes.
And that's where you should in this, and getting good talent. A lot of my problems in this are in the framing and the writing. Like it's a classic thing addressing this. And because of Boomer Truth, when you're talking about changing history, this is the thing you go for. All your alternate history novels, it's either sort of Civil War and the other side wins, or Second World War and the Axis wins. those are the sort of two scenarios that you go to over and over if you do alternative history novels.
Yeah. Harry
And this
Turtledove, biggest offender.
who's that?
Harry Turtledove.
Oh,
He
yes.
did both over and over and over to death.
You know, I will say there's a series that does that I really quite like called Farthing. Gosh, who was an... No, I can't remember it, but it's a Farthing, Halfpenny, and anyway, well worth looking up. Well worth looking up. But on this, I like the premise. I like the payoff. I like that they took it seriously. You know, the monstrosity, the enormity of what she's trying to do is what stops her doing it the first time. I like that. You know, you might think, well, she knows the mission. Go straight in and do it. Job done. And I like that. You know, acknowledge how difficult it is. But the writing here bugged me. The mix of German and English with questionable German accents.
I don't know German well enough to tell you that, but mixing German and English doesn't work well.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it just, you know, the German accent well enough to know when it's bogus, but they could have at least stuck to that or gotten someone who knows German in the role.
It's just distracting when they keep mixing it like, oh, Murgoot, I do say, das war mir gefallen, do you know what I mean? Why go back and forth?
I don't know. That's a mistake a lot of writers make. It's if you're going when you're writing okay, I lost my train of thought. Oh, mixing languages like that, if your audience doesn't know it, it's better to either italicize it or bracket it, just to let them know that they're not speaking English. Or they're supposedly speaking German, and when they speak in English, it's italicized or bracketed. They should have just stuck with English with, even though it's a bad German accent, it's still better than trying to mix it.
Yeah. The other thing was the writing was done for the audience. This is kind of the thing that I tried to get into this a lot in the Scream 6 review. A lot of the way this is written is not how things would happen in the logic of the scene, but how it would have impact for the audience at home. So people will constantly refer in this episode to, please go see my baby, Adolf Hitler. Or, please see baby Hitler. And like literally call him that. And it's like, you just say, my son or the baby. Like they go out of their way to make sure you're hearing Hitler over and over. It's like, honestly, if you did a drinking game with shots for every Hitler in this episode, you are done for. So another minor cringe I had, but the other
were
thing
a bit blatant, weren't they?
Just a bit. Just a bit. I guess the other thing, apart from if we're talking the boomer aspect, I'm sounding like I'm hating on this episode. I had a blast. I really enjoyed this. I'm not going to say it's high quality, but I found it interesting, and I really like James Remar in this. But something I pay attention to is that sort of assumptions and worldview. And what I got from this, you see the idea in this that the failed Austrian painter became who he became, believed what he believed, and did what he did because his father is an extreme meanie. right?
Yeah.
I find that really indicative of the sort of mid 90s and onwards sort of psychologizing. Like when we covered you weren't on for that episode, Murgoot, but we covered the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein, and in that one they Frankenstein is motivated to make his creature because his mother dies in childbirth, and he's deeply psychologically traumatized by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that it's a real thing in the 90s, is to sort of do the psychologizing, do the psychoanalyzing, and it's, Hitler isn't motivated by, say, things he's seen in the war, by ideas that were very prevalent in Germany at the time, by the particular specific political factions that were able to be tapped for power at the time, or by conditions in Weimar Germany, or following the
or having a hardcore mentor.
Yeah, there we go. Or reading anything else. It's all down to, well, his father was an asshole, so that's what did it. And that explanation, even if you take that and say, yeah, it's all the dad, even if you swap out the baby, you literally swap out the baby, you get the same result, because it's all nurture, baby. It doesn't give you, well, why does everyone join him? You can't answer the question of how you get World War II and the election of your boy Adolf with that answer. And it's just a very limited 90 view. I went off on one there. Sorry about that, Murgoot.
Oh, no problem. That's what we're here for.
I mean, does that make sense? Do you think I've...
very much so. You're putting it into words better than I am, so you're doing better than me.
Thank you. I mean, it's something I notice. It's always a thing of, this is that intense nurture explanation. And it's also safer. It's a lot safer, and it's a lot easier. You don't have to do a lot of intensive reading, and you don't have to grapple with any difficult issues if someone just had a really mean dad. And by the way, this got applied everywhere. This got applied wildly. We'll skip forward. I think it's a mere 4 years, and we got Hannibal Rising. I'm sure all of you have been wondering, oh gosh, I haven't heard anything about Hannibal Rising for a long time. Gosh, what a treat that was. Oof. Rhys Ifans and Gong Li. Oh, amazing. Sign me up. Get me the Blu-ray. But even that, it was like Hannibal Lecter. Why is he such a psychotic cannibal genius? Well, he had this childhood trauma, you see, that involved cannibalism, and therefore blah blah blah. I see the 90s psychoanalytical mind. This is before intersectionality comes in. They tried this episode now. You would have the more driving worldview of this time would be in place, but it wasn't in power at that time, and so we get the 90s psychoanalytic view driving this whole story, and that's what I find. Patrick Batman, I love you, man, but we have limits on this channel. We have limits.
I loved Harris's writing so much. I bought Hannibal Rising when it came out in novel form.
Did you?
And I almost didn't finish it. Oh, God.
Oh, no. I just checked and confirmed it. Gong Li was in it. I felt very bad. Apparently, so was Dominic West. What the heck?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I'd forgotten that. I'd totally let him off the hook.
Oh, it's been long. I only watched it once, and that was
Yeah.
because I was at a friend's house when they wanted to watch it, and I just said, well, whatever, I'm gonna eat pizza. Because I'd read the novel and was just like, have fun. I'm gonna be sitting here eating.
Yeah. It was a good choice, especially in the pizza, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I found the worldview the most troubling part of it, really, that and the writing, but interesting as a product of its time.
Yeah. Well, the twist at the end, they did handle the time travel pretty well, and that's why I'm giving it a higher mark. I'm giving it a 7.5.
Yeah, did you this might sound silly, but I had an idea when I was watching this that they mentioned quite a bit that the three other children had predeceased baby Hitler. I almost expected them to. I'd kind of forgotten the exposition at the start, and I thought it was going to be like she's going to find out that they've gone back and killed the previous three. And it always just ends up with, well, fine, it's the next one ends up doing it.
That was a thought, but they handled it well. They really did. Just the twist of buying the street woman's kid was very, very interesting. It was a unique way of doing it.
Yeah, it totally came out of nowhere for me. I didn't see it coming. I liked it. Or I almost wondered, was it going to be she was going to explicitly sort of identify herself as Jewish? And then it would be like her attempts to steal the baby. Oh my gosh, that's what turns him against them. Dun, dun, dun. That might have come off as a bit bad taste if they'd have gone with that, to be honest. Dollface, thank you for £5. Much appreciated. Also, thank you for referencing 8mm, a film we really like on this channel, even if it's a bit hard to sell to people, to be honest. But yes, this is why 8mm is based for what Machine says to Nicolas Cage. These things I do because I like them. Heck and yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderfully disturbing, yes. No psychoanalyzing. No 1995's The Last Supper, where Ron Perlman says he's going to sit down with your rejected postcard designer and just talk him out of it. No. Like it. We don't give that. We like this. Oh God, there was a really great episode of Torchwood. It was called Countryside, and it with the side spelt with a C. Also about cannibals, and that just had another great one of, why do you do horrible things? Because I like it. Oof. Not giving you anything else.
In the past, I haven't seen
What, Torchwood?
I haven't seen Torchwood in a long time. Captain Jack Harkness.
Yes. A bit of a slog to get through, but then you hit Children of Earth. I mean, I'm sounding very normie here, but it may have been messy. It may have been very, very messy in part, but Children of Earth is such glory. Just anyway, sorry. I won't Torchwood post. Did you? I feel like I've dominated this one, Murgoot. Is there anything else you'd like to say on this one?
I think you covered it. I mean, I like the twist at the end.
I should really have asked, Herr Murgoot, willst du a bit more about this episode sagen? You know, if we're going to really, really fit.
I rate it 7.5 and give it a bit of cheese for the exposition.
7.5. I think that's I feel like I need to pick a fight over an episode with you because I'm just like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Actually, 7. It's more interesting. It's very flawed, but it's 25 minutes. I was never bored in this.
No,
Like I said, I watched like 4 more episodes after the homework. I was having a great time.
yeah. This
So,
one, I have to say, this one had the best timing of all of them,
yeah.
even with the exposition in the beginning.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, the pacing was much better in this. The pacing really was strong here. Yeah, I just got that. Richard, I love The Wire. I really do. Oh man, I don't know. Who would I review it with? Who would I do it? I don't know. Maybe one day. Although we were speaking about one of The Wire's most memorable, I should say, memorable actors, Wood Harris, turns up in this series. He's in the episode Another Life. I couldn't believe it because I never see Wood Harris anywhere. Like, he turned up in the Creed films. Where is he getting work? I just haven't seen that guy. He was great, and I don't see him anywhere. It's a shame. Anyway, right. Let's move on. I'm going to go similar. Maybe a 7. Maybe a 7. Like the boomer worldview was fascinating, and I'd be dropping the points if this had been like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Timing was nice. Timing was very nice. And yes, as we said, that Gypsy Blood explains it all. Very based show, very based. Okay, we'll move on. Which I think means going to our final episode, which I accidentally showed when we started on this one, which is, I can't forget, it's Shade of Evil? Is it Shade of Truth?
Shades of Guilt.
Shades of Guilt. There we go. Excellent. Oh gosh, am I doing the Guinness for this one? I am. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Wood Harris was in Justified.
Yes.
Well, that was a longer running series. Was that with Timothy Oliphant?
Yes, it was.
Is it worth it?
Very enjoyable series, especially
Nice.
the first 3 seasons.
Oh, thank you for the tip. I like Timothy Oliphant. I like Wood Harris. You've got me sold on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Shades of Guilt. So, our protagonist is driving at night through a slightly risky area, and suddenly, in all the rain at night, suddenly a black chap comes up, hammering at the window, rah rah rah, all that stuff, saying let me in, and our protagonist, whose name I really should know. Help me out, folks. I never remember any names. Is it Peter? James? One of them is called James. Why do I never remember their names?
McGreevy is played by Vincent Ventresca.
Sorry, what was the name, Pat?
Matthew McGreevy.
Yes, Matthew McGreevy. They say about 10 times in the episode.
And Hill Harper plays Professor John Woodrill.
There we go. Wonderful. Okay, so Matthew McGreevy driving along. Suddenly, windows hammered on urgently by this guy who we'll find out is Professor John, saying, let me in. He does not let the very agitated hobo-looking dude hammering on his window in a dodgy neighborhood into his car. What a bastard. He drives away and then sees the black chap set upon in shadows in a actually quite disturbing sequence, I thought. Very well shot. Mm-hmm. But then gets home and finds out he's got an injury, which he can't account for. And then, in very short order, he finds himself really put in the shoes of Professor John, getting not just the injuries that he can't explain that hurt him awfully, to then starting to slowly transform into John. And if you're wondering, hang on, does that mean they blacked him up?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Badly.
in a very questionable decision, this guy got blacked up. Welcome to the Trudeau Zone. Yes. They keep it very brief, and they very sensibly only have about 2 scenes where he is extremely tanned, and they very sensibly move over into him being played by the actor who played Professor John originally.
Hill Harper. Good actor.
Hill Harper. Yeah. Do you know him from other stuff? Because I don't think I've seen him in anything else.
He's been in a lot of series. God, brain fart.
Always happens, man. I'll look him up. I'll see what he's done. He was in Pumpkinhead too. You should have been straight on that, Murgoot.
Like I said, brain fart. CSI New York was one of his bigger roles. He was
Fresh
in
Prince of Bel-Air.
Good Doctor. He's a good actor. He really is.
Yeah, he got a couple of things where he was a main role. I'm looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude's had a good career. Yes, Hill Harper basically takes it over, and then Matthew McGreevy is now the man he did not help. He therefore, understandably, can't stay in his house because his wife and dog chase him out. He can't use his money because it doesn't match his ID. And he knows the police are now looking for him. And he ends up being chased by one of the abundant gangs of skinheads that are so common these days. And ends up basically doing a bit of an Ouroboros, bit of a time cycle, ends up hammering on his own door. And this time, the Matthew McCready he sees lets him in. And it's like the tale has been learned. It's an interesting one. Dollface saying this felt like a rejected Tales from the Hood script. It's along that line, or that we like Tales from the Hood. We love Tales from the Hood. This is in stark contrast to the other episodes. Hang on, did he go back? Is he able to go back after this? I'm led to believe that it's not possible for him to go back, having made this transformation. I don't think that was stressed in the script.
It was left hanging. And it is...
But he's gone black. He can't go back. I'm reliably informed of this.
It is reminiscent of the Vic Morrow episode in Twilight Zone, the movie, where he gets put in the shoes of the person that he was prejudiced against.
I'm very glad you referenced that, because that came to my mind as well. Although without, I mean, I guess the big contrast there is in the Vic Morrow episode. The lesson he's taught stems from him sitting in a bar. I've got to think how I describe this. Venting, Fed posting.
Basically.
It was like Babby's first Telegram account. Just he was relentless, boy, Yeah. And so that's why he was taught a lesson. In this one, Matthew McCready's big crime is not letting so I should have got my Tom Sowell book out for this one. Not letting a guy in the night when it's raining who looks crazed and hobo-like hammering at his door, not letting him in. And I will cite a little bit of Thomas Sowell here, who in his interesting book, Discrimination and Disparities, draws apart two types of discrimination. One where you have enough information to make a very informed decision on a specific individual instance, and the other kind of discrimination where you have to go from bigger picture, broad trends that you're aware of. You know, basically, Thomas Sowell would not condemn this guy. Patrick, yes, I got big Swallow vibes. He was just out for a Subway at that time, and so were the skinheads. What can I say? Thank you for the £2, much appreciated. Yeah. Oh gosh. How's your Simpsons impressions?
Not great.
2000
skinheads weren't that big of an issue. Late 80s, early 90s, I would have believed it, but it was kind of ridiculous. They were way too in your face for this point in time.
Yeah, this is the Boomer Truth episode. So I want to contrast this one with the Monsters Due on Maple Street, which was so intensely colorblind. Like it was like obviously done, but so much like they do not even mention it. In fact, they don't even give the family. We never see the family they're suspicious of. It would have been the easiest, most obvious thing to kind of code the Muslim. Didn't even do it. We never see them.
Yeah.
It was so consciously race blind in Fresh Prince. Whereas this one, you see something that we're very used to now. I mean, am I? How can I say? Am I making it a bit achronological there, Murgoot? Am I getting it wrong? But
no, this was the start of it. I mean, they were blatant. This one almost seemed to rip off American History X by putting it from a bystander's perspective. It's because it had the assault was shades of American History X and its brutality, and it was once it ramped up, it's like, yeah, it's a morality play, very, very heavy-handed.
I mean, we say return to Fresh Prince, but let's remember Fresh Prince had quite a few episodes where they did talk about things in this kind of way. They were happy to say to have episodes like very focused on specifically prejudice against Black people. They were very happy to do that. So Fresh Prince wasn't, similarly to this, it wasn't consistently colorblind. But this is one of those ones where I've got to say that the morality is so absolutely insane. Am I heartless, Murgoot? Am I checked out? Do I need to skip mass? I don't know. I just think, where was it? Dr. Prepper phrased it perfectly. I mean, I can't improve on this. The lesson that you should risk endangering yourself to help a total stranger or a different race in a low-trust urban environment is dangerous and insane. I mean, I suppose the only thing I'd say is I would bring in the Thomas Sowell, and I'll be a bit cringe here. We'll have a bit of character breaking. Obviously, folks, if you've been around this channel long enough, you know how I feel about things. I have no hate for anybody, which is why it feels so awkward to say this kind of thing. But to bring in the Thomas Sowell aspect, if you look at discrimination, his book Discrimination and Disparities, which I think is about 2019, he would talk about the fact that the race is relevant in the sense that a more comfortable example is of, say, if an old Japanese woman is hammering at your door, your knowledge of crime rates means you're not having the risk. I'm very sorry. It's
when
most
people wouldn't take the risk. I personally would be 50-50 on it. Granted, I'm 6'4", 6'5". At the time, I weighed 280 pounds and was strapped. I mean,
Yeah.
I carried at the time. It would have been 50-50 for me, but anybody else who wasn't.
Well, let's be honest, male alone is making it risky enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Urban
even
neighborhood makes it even worse.
Yeah, night neighborhood, badly dressed, then, you know, it's not a pleasant thing to say, but knowledge of crime statistics, that is an extra factor. That is a specific extra factor.
Who was it that
And so people judging him for it, you know, it's not a nice truth, and you wouldn't judge individuals that way. But in that kind of situation, it would be the kind of thing that Thomas Sowell writes as a type 2 discrimination situation, where you don't have the luxury of a considered, very well-informed individual view.
It's not
I
the
shouldn't have-
race, it's the threat level at this point.
That's what I'd go for.
Yenria makes the
Man,
good
I hate
point,
raising
regardless of
this
the
stuff.
races involved. Do not open your car door or front door to anyone. And yeah, it's a threat level thing.
That old Chinese woman or old Japanese woman, you know, even that's looking a bit risky, you know, in a storm. But so for him to be judged for that is, I've got to, I mean, it's insane. It's absolute no skin of the game insanity. And also everyone else who I think you're meant to judge in this did absolutely nothing wrong. Do you think it's fair to say that? Okay, maybe the skinheads. I'll went a bit off here.
The skinheads definitely did wrong.
Yeah,
But yeah.
We'll leave them aside. But let's say the the guy in the hotel who sees a guy give someone else's wallet and act suspicious. Like, is he wrong for not wanting it? You know, insisting on ID? No. Is the wife wrong because someone she's never seen before is in the home sounding crazy?
Yeah.
Is the based, strapped neighbor who comes out to defend his neighbor in the wrong? Heck no. Yeah. So it's just one of those ones where everyone is making sensible decisions here, and you can't really say they're wrong. Devontae, yeah, I mean, as Devontae saying, if it was me in danger, I want to be helped. Absolutely, we'd all want to be helped. It's just that thing of it's whether you can take the risk yourself, or in the situation of whether it is reasonable for someone to want to help you. It's sort of the kind of like the thing of, I bet you've seen. I'm just thinking of when I've been in a town centre and you've had someone come up and beg to you, but they've given you a bit of a story. And I'd hate it, but you'd recognise someone is just giving me a story here. I would want to be someone who would help someone who's, come up with a situation that's awful, and they desperately need money to get home, but you're just also aware that in so many cases it's a scam, and you just think, yeah, you can't take that risk. So it's the horrible thing. I guess what we're really lamenting here is sort of a high trust society versus a low trust society. I'm starting to think maybe it's a bad idea to leave this episode until last to discuss, because we're in heavy topics here. Yeah, please interpret anything charitably here.
Even with how I was in 2002, my decision would still be 50-50 if I was up to the danger or not. If I'd seen the skinheads, I know the threat level on that, and I would have let them in. If I didn't see the skinheads, it'd still be 50-50. And that's just because dealing with criminal neighborhoods. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the crux of what we're getting to here is he's done absolutely nothing wrong. It's a lamentable situation, but he made an extremely sensible choice. And the episode wants to punish him for it, but everyone acts completely rationally.
Yeah. It's just the Twilight Zone got involved with it. But
yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one, but you know, with the minor problem of the entire conception of the story is bonkers. It was powerful.
Yes, it was, and it redeemed itself at the end. It's my main problems with this one, because it was perfectly understandable all the way through, and what choice would I have made? But that was perfectly fine. My problem was the technical aspect. Ramped up a little bit too quick. The makeup effects were horrible. The way the scenery was handled was the office was just cringe.
That was such a weird scene. Like, they were in the office for one scene. That's a lot of people to cram in that you never do anything else with. That was so weird.
Yeah. It's most of my problems with it were, like I said, the technical aspects of it. It's the makeup was so horrible.
They were wise to limit it to basically 2 scenes.
Yeah.
But there is some serious unintentional comedy with this.
Oh yeah. It was. I give it a 7.5. It's and cheese for the makeup job. God, they butchered that.
They did. I mean, powerful moments. It was. It's a shame because I've got to get that guy's name again. Hill Harper?
Yes.
Is that it? Hill Harper. I mean, they got the casting right because he sold it. Mm-hmm. He sold that desperation. When he goes to their family to try and put his case across, and the way everything turns, even though the scenario is so extreme, like I liked all that stuff was handled well, and he just managed to sell that desperation, even if you kind of can see where the end is going. You can you start to get a feeling, not straight from the start, but you start to think, okay, yeah, he's going to end up in the same position. All right.
Yeah.
Even if you saw it, it played well. It landed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It still managed to be powerful and slightly disquieting.
Yeah, and Vincent Ventresca does hangdog guilt very well. I mean, he's got that hangdog wrinkled up face, very expressive, and he does well with that. He was kind of an it guy for a while. On he was in The Invisible Man for a few seasons. He was in a bunch of bit roles where he really pulled off what he was doing. He's a good character actor and very expressive at that.
Yeah. It's almost a shame we didn't see more of him, but I think he did a pretty solid job.
Yeah.
Wasn't as much for him to do because obviously Hill Harper's meant to take over. He was also in very good shape, if I recall.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see.
Both of them are ripped.
Oh, here we go. Yes. Thank you, Devontae. Oh, we should have listened. We should have listened to Forrest Whitaker. Yeah. Mixed bag on this one. Like I also have I guess I have to be a little harsher as well as being very boomer truth. It's also kind of backwards reality. Like,
yeah.
Oh dear. Just from what we know in terms of in-group preference and in terms of risk of the violence, it is backwards world, and it's post Jussie Smollett. Oof.
Yeah. 2002 was a very, very different time. It really was.
We were a lot more innocent back then.
I wouldn't say innocent. We were very, very different in our attitudes.
That's maybe a better way of saying it. Yeah. Ah, dear. So it's an odd one. I wonder if leaving this last, it's going to make a smoother transition for when we get into the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone. It's not far off.
Ooh.
We're going to get into 2005 by the end of this arc that we're doing right now. So by the end of January, we're covering horror anthologies from 2005. Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone, I think, kicks off in 2019. Yeah, 2019. So I'm not saying it's March. It's probably May we're going to get to it, and then we're basically up to the present day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was your score for this one again, Murgoot?
7.5. Good, strong.
7.5 again. Okay, interesting. Yeah. I'm torn on this one. I think I dropped this down to a 6 because the premise, it's just one of those ones where the premise is too crazy for me to go with. It's too much of a consistent flaw because I'm just there being like, literally everyone is doing the right thing. You know?
I don't know. Wow, for once I'm rating things higher than proper horror show.
Oh, what has it come to? It's a sick world we live in these days. And if TCG were here, I'd follow it up with a line, Slim, for Pete's sake, put down Christopher Reeve's legs. But I don't know. I saved the rap for him.
Yeah. This season of the Twilight Zone is okay, but it's nowhere near as good as the original or even the 1984, 1985 version. It was a bit too heavy-handed on the ones that I've seen. I mean, the best of the four, I think, is Cradle of Darkness. And this one was a decent follow-up. But Cradle of Darkness was the best of the four for me, just because it was... Yes, it was time travel, but it resolved paradoxes, and it was well done.
Yeah, and an interesting solution to the paradox does save a lot. I can't disagree with you there. There's something overall. I don't know if there's kind of a more fun vibe to this one. I really like Forrest Whitaker's hosting. It makes it feel a lot more like Twilight Zone than.
You there?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
All right. The joys of streaming, hey?
Gotta love StreamYards.
Good times. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I prefer this to the 80s in presentation. But I just like the kind of charming quality of the stories we saw in the 1985, where it wasn't as connected to something super obvious. All of these have had the message, and not like the critical drinker, the message, but they've had their worldview a lot more front and center. Maybe with the exception of Cradle of Darkness, where that sort of nature-nurture thing and the psychoanalytics is something you have to reach down a little bit for. Because they don't really seem to consider that it's wrong at any point to, kill baby Hitler. You notice that when Forrest Whitaker comes in at the end of Cradle of Darkness, he's like, poor Annie. I'm like, what about the baby? I mean, like that, in the episode's logic, an innocent baby was drowned alongside with our time traveler. So I guess they just didn't want Forrest Whitaker to say, poor Adolf Hitler. Yeah, I guess that would, I can see why he wouldn't want to say that anyway. It's a weird one. Could I have like the kind of gloriously cheesy new metal Forrest Whitaker presentation of the 2002 and the stories of the 1985? I don't know. Could I have that mashup? I know that's what would work for me if I can't have the original. Unsurprisingly, folks, original and best for me. Of these, I might lean slightly more towards. No, it's Cradle of Darkness as well. But the thing is, I didn't rate any of these amazingly highly, but I enjoyed watching them so much. I know I am going to find my favorite. There is a channel on here, very easy, has a complete playlist of all 44 episodes. I know, I feel like a binge. I'm sure there's going to be like a 10 burgers in here somewhere. Yeah.
I need to see Eye of the Beholder 2002.
Oh, yes. They changed the makeup quite a lot there. I gather. I mean, yeah.
I've got to watch it.
We got to do it. All right. Well, I think that's everything for us. Oh, actually, chat. I didn't ask you. What's your favorite? How would you, if you did your homework, how do you rate this? If you want to give us an overall score, I'll let that come in. I'm sorry for not prompting that. We're as a wife is saying there, she wants a compilation of the Whitaker intros and outros. I could do that, and if I did that compilation, you would see their technique of they just swing the camera when he's coming in. Once you catch it, it's I know it added hilarity. And sometimes a green screen is a heck of a lot more obvious than others. Interestingly here, chat's quite off with us here. So Patrick Batman and Dr. Prep are both saying it's still a good life for the favourite. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't connect to that one as much. It had some good vibes. It deserved a whole hour. And it deserved a lot more thought into the more disturbing implications, I'm going to say. But yeah, that one didn't land for me as much as I really wanted it to. Yeah, wifey there talking about Rewind. That's the one with the kid from American Pie and Freddy Got Fingered, Eddie K. Thomas. That was... Oh, that's a bit glorious. It doesn't make much sense. Basically, a gambler gets a device that rewinds time, and he uses it to gamble. It's a very simple story. Yeah, I don't know if many people managed to do the homework. I mean, response a bit slow, but well, hopefully, chat, we've inspired you to take a look at this. This is cozy viewing, I would say. Very cozy viewing. It's not It's not hugely deep, but the beauty of it is the 25-minute episodes. They're really nice to just put on and chill out to. So highly, highly recommended, especially because it's free. You've got it in Potato Vision on YouTube. I gather it's also on Daily Motion in what looks to be better quality. I couldn't find a legal purchase for it unless you buy a whole DVD. So do what thou wilt. Oh, we're getting the lates coming in. Super Nanny's on a roll. Devontae saying you also liked It's Still a Good Life. We seem to be very at odds with chat on this one, Murgoot.
Yeah, well, personal taste.
Yeah, and they hit the one. Well, yeah, Devontae, we're back on that. We're agreeing on that. Probably the best of the bunch. It was such a challenge to choose these episodes, I swear. It really was. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's everything on Twilight Zone 2002, in case you had anything more you wanted to add, Murgoot.
No, I'm good. Super Nanny screaming.
Yes, justifiably. Well, there we go, folks. With that said, that is Twilight Zone 2002. It's weird that I've rated basically everything mid, but I'm still gonna say I really recommend this. It's good fun. Your horror homework for next week. We are off the series briefly, and we're going to go a bit further out with this one. Your horror homework for next week is 2004's Three Extremes. Oh, Devontae, I think you've talked about the Scream script. You mentioned how I could find it, but you won't be able to post a link in here. It'll get nuked from the chat because you have to be a mod to post a link. But I saw where you said you could post it. And I think you also have me on Discord. So send it to me there if you want. I'd be very interested to read it. Yes, sorry. Your horror homework for next week is the Asian horror anthology, Three Extremes. As I recall, it has a Korean director, a Japanese director, and a Thai director. Cantonese director. I'm thinking of the other one. The sequel has a Thai director. Doing South Asian horror stories bound together. It's a little bit messy, but it's kind of interesting. And I just thought I thought we should go for something a bit further afield. So 2004, 3 Extremes. And then the week after that, we're going to do Masters of Horror, and I will consult with my trusty co-hosts, my trusty co-hosts over which precise episodes. And yes, obviously, the Takeshi Miike is going to be in there, seeing as they weren't able to broadcast it. So that'll be an easy one to talk about. All right, thanks, Devontae. I see that. That will be nifty. I'll be able to get that. Thank you. All right, well, that's it. We've talked about Twilight Zone 2002. You've got your horror homework, and I hope you've also had a happy new year. Thanks very much, Murgoot, for joining me again.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
It wouldn't be Horror Anthology without you. And you know, you always have that extra knowledge. It's very appreciated. Well, there we go. That is everything for this week. Thank you, chat. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's good to be back doing this. And I hope you enjoy the weekend, the week ahead, and your horror homework. And I will see you next week. With that, I'm going to sign off. Oh, yeah. Back to the cornfield, boys. Thank you, Patrick Batman. Thanks, y'all. Cheers.